All right, it's 2 o'clock. We've got head coach Brian Newberry on to talk spring football. Got a lot of people on today, which is awesome. So we're going to go three questions each first, and then we'll circle back around if we have time, which we should have time. Scott Wyckoff, you lead us off.
Hey, Coach, how cool was it to go out to Indianapolis and watch Rayon do what he did?
Yeah, it was great. It's the first time I'd been to the combine, and to be able to go out and support one of our players and just see all the things that he was doing. It was good. And we had several coaches there, and it was fun to go out and support him. And like I said, see that for the first time, pretty neat deal.
And what does that mean to the program to get the visibility that Rayon's given you, not only at the combine, but also in the Senior Bowl?
Yeah, I think it's great for our program. One of the things that the guys that come to school here want to be able to do is, if they're good enough, have an opportunity to play in the NFL, and having a guy that's going through that process, and a guy that's gone to the combine, gone to the Senior Bowl, a guy that's a good chance he's going to get drafted is it's big. It's great exposure, helps in recruiting.
And what impressed you the most about the sophomores in the defensive backfield last year?
Well, I think we had a bunch of good players, and some guys that got reps in games that got some valuable playing experience. And obviously, there's some holes to fill, in the secondary, some good players, and I'm excited about those young guys. And I don't think I've been as excited and optimistic about an all season about spring football as I am right now.
Thanks, Coach.
When in Indy, did you guys stop by Elmo's Steakhouse for the famous shrimp cocktail?
We did. It was it wasn't Elmo's. It was the one right next door to it.
Yep. Same thing. Yep.
Yeah. That was an experience.
That will definitely open up the sinuses for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Also, welcome Tim Nolan, who just came in. Tim, we're doing three questions each to start. Mike James, you're up.
So, Coach, how important is spring ball for the rising seniors to develop their leadership?
The whole off season, really, Mike, is important for those things. But yeah, I mean, we've had a tremendous off season, up to this point, and obviously having spring football ahead of us is a great time for those guys to kind of separate themselves, to kind of stand up and lead this football team. And we got a really good senior class. I'm excited about. So yeah, it's really important.
So about that senior class, it's bigger than some of the senior classes that you've had the last few years. What kind of an impact does it have, or does it have an impact when you actually have more seniors than historically the program wants?
Yeah, I mean, the more seniors, the better, as far as I'm concerned. And the attrition's been good. And, you'd like for your senior class to be about the size that it is right now every year. I mean, last year was a pretty small senior class, and it's a good group, that I'm excited about. Some great leadership in that group, some great leadership potential in that group as well.
So last year, we saw the emergence of a couple of players like Kenny McShann and Cody Howard, who has gone through a lot of injuries, hadn't really had a chance to show what they could do as much in game situations really until this year. Are there any players that are coming up this year that can use the spring sort of in the same way that Cody and Kenny did, where they've had some injury troubles, but they're healthy now and they're ready to show what they can do?
Yeah, I think there's several guys, and I'll miss some of them, but we've had a lot of guys that have been banged up. Seth English is a safety that tore his ACL. He was able to get back and go through some of the morning workout stuff for us. So excited to see, what he's able to do this spring. It'll be big for him. And there's several other guys kind of fall in the same category. And there are every year, and like Kenny McShann is accepting the rule, coming off of 2 ACLs and being able to come back and play and start and contribute for us. And then Cody Howard's a guy that played banged up, all year and had his knee cleaned up at the end of the year, obviously, or his ankle, I'm sorry, cleaned up at the end of the year. And so excited to get him back and see what he can do. I think he's going to be able to make a ton of progress when he can practice on a consistent basis. I mean, a lot of those type of guys that we couldn't quite develop as much as you'd like to because of some of those nagging injuries.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Beth English's father is Ron English, the defensive coordinator at Louisville. Joe Miller.
Hey, Coach, I wanted to ask, all the you talk about it, it's really early, but all the conversation about the skill position guys coming back and all the offensive production that's coming back. What's your message to the guys behind those guys that might, look at it and say, oh, I've got a guy that played, started 12 games, started 13 games. What's your message to the guys that, at the slot backs and at the other positions that, even though you have a bunch of guys with a lot of productivity back, what's your message to those guys to sort of pump them up and try to, make sure that they're part of this upcoming season?
Yeah. Compete. Get your name buzzing. Something that we talked about in the team meeting today. You want to be a guy that staff's talking about, when they're watching film. And we've got to establish some depth. Certainly got some good skill players coming back, but we want those guys to go compete for a job. I mean, to me, nobody's job is set in stone right now. And so we certainly need to establish some depth. And there's some talented young players that have a great opportunity this spring. We got some great skill players coming back. We got to establish some depth, and then we got to be able to protect up front and block for those guys as well. So we're really going to have to develop our line this spring, but excited about the tools we've got to work with.
One of the things you talked about this time last year was sort of the leadership of the guys and sort of how you established that in spring ball. With that void, at least seemingly on the defensive side of the football field, a lot of guys that were big leaders on your team. Who do you look to sort of be that guy on the defensive side of the field right now with all the experience that left from last year's team?
Well, we've got some good players coming back. Like I said, I think you got a veteran corner in Andrew Duhart, who's shown some really good leadership qualities. Landon Robinson coming back. I mean, those are guys that are definitely leaders, and there's several others. And I think that starts to emerge, throughout spring ball and even after that a little bit through the summer. It's not something that happens right away, obviously. Something that you've got to develop a little bit. And but we've got some good players on that side of football. We've got a good nucleus coming back, but there's certainly some guys, some really good players, Joe, that we've got to replace. So there's going to have to be a lot of guys that step up, not into those roles, just playing roles, but leadership roles as well.
What are the one or two things that you want to accomplish more than anything during spring ball, and that have you pointed in the right direction when it comes to fall practice?
Yeah. Well, I think we want to continue to establish, our culture, our style, our brand of football, really doubling down on that. I think, sometimes it's easier to turn things around than it is to sustain and get better. It's human nature to kind of get complacent or rest on what you did in the past. And I had a lengthy conversation with our guys about that today. But spring football has always been for me, Joe, about the fundamentals. I mean, it's the time to go and attack those things. Yeah, we're going to work on scheme and all those type of things, but we got to go get better at the fundamentals. And as a young player, that's the quickest, fastest way to go from being a guy that didn't contribute to being a guy that has a chance to contribute and developing trust, with your teammates.
Thanks, Coach.
Thanks, Joe.
Wags.
Is there anything you learned during your first spring as head coach that maybe you made changes or implemented different things this spring?
Every spring is different, Wags, and I think the thing that we've done the last 2 springs is we've had some really physical practices. It's the time of year where we go and we spend a ton of time tackling, a ton of good on good work, competing. I think as you get into fall camp, you got to be a little more careful about how you do that. And so it's always been, what does your roster look like? What do you need to get done? How much live contact can you handle? And just being smart about the way you do it. And that could change as, throughout spring ball. And as we get to the halfway point, we may evaluate some things and change some things. But it's always a little bit different. We certainly learn year to year.
So you have a lengthy break. You're going to have 2 practices this week, and then you don't have another practice till like the 16th. I know that's due to spring break.
Yeah.
Why start before spring break if you only have 2 practices? Why not just run all of spring camp after spring break?
Yeah, it's a good question. Last year we had a lot of conversations about it. I like getting the 2 helmet practices in. Take a break. A lot of the stuff, last year was kind of experiment for us, and they retained a lot of the information. But we came back and hit the ground running right where we left off. And it gives us a chance kind of on the back end to start to prepare to go on the road and recruit, have one-on-one meetings with our players. And just the way our schedule lays out, it makes a lot of sense for us to do it that way.
So will Blake Horvath really do much this spring? I mean, do you feel like you need to look at him, or are you going to give your backups more work?
Yeah, I certainly hope so. He needs to go get better just like everybody else does. And I want there to be healthy competition there at quarterback. And so, yeah, he's going to practice just like the rest of these guys. Now, obviously, with our quarterbacks, Wags, those guys are going to be in red jerseys. We won't go live with our quarterbacks, but he'll get all the work that everybody else does.
Tim Nolan.
Coach, for those who are currently fighting for a spot or trying to prove themselves with the guys that moved on from this program, what are some tangible things that you look for in spring ball that you'd like to see for somebody gunning for a spot?
Yeah, it's the culture stuff that we talk about all the time, Tim. Being elite with the effort, the attitude, and the toughness piece, and just establishing the credibility and being a guy that's dependable, and that your teammates trust. Something we talk about a lot around here. And we talked about being a multi-dimensional player. And spring's the time to really work on that. And what I mean by that is the first dimension being a guy that just you know what you do, you know what your job is, but you don't have a clue really what's going on around you. And that second dimension being, all right, I know what the guy on my right and my left, maybe behind me does. Kind of know where I fit in the defense. Then the next progression being, hey, I understand the defense entirely. I know what's going on. I understand the element. What the coordinator is calling here. I understand where my help is. I know where the football is going. And so being a more well-rounded player with a broader understanding is from the goals we have for spring ball.
And have you noticed, just given the results from last year, more of the guys leading the spring portion than maybe the staff as it was in your first year of spring ball?
Yeah, certainly from my first year. And I thought last year the leadership was healthy. I think the leadership this offseason has been really, really good, and excited about that piece of it, in our senior class. And we've got some good young guys that lead as well. So it's a good group, and that piece hopefully will continue to get better. Always looking for a player-led team, and that's a process. And but we're coming along nicely, I think, in regards to
that. And lastly, how difficult is it to kind of damper some of the excitement? I mean, this is a fun group. I mean, you had a special season last year, and you have a lot of key pieces coming back that were integral parts of that. How do you keep the focus on one day at a time and just continue to improve each and every day?
Yeah, it's a balance. Like you don't want to dampen, that excitement, that momentum we had toward the end of the year. But at the same time, you want those guys to understand that the past has nothing to do with the present, or the future. And so, and key for us is we're still hunting. We probably get a little bigger target on our back, but we're still hunting. We still got a chip on our shoulder. We're still constantly looking to prove ourselves and to do things better than we've ever done them before in every area of our program. We're looking for every edge that we can find, and as a program, as a unit, as a player. And so, how can we keep the foot on the gas? How can we raise the bar with what we're doing?
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
All right, we'll go right around the horn again. Scott Wyckoff.
Coach, what does it mean for the offense to have coaches Cronic, Cole, and Guillermo coming back after having a full season coming into spring practice?
Yeah, it's huge. To have the continuity that we have on the staff right now is tremendous. It's always what you want, as a head coach and second year in the program or in the system, excuse me. These guys are a lot more comfortable with what we're doing. And so I'm excited about the continued evolution, of the offense. Coach Cronic and Coach Guillermo and DC, Coach Cole have a really good understanding of who these players are, what our strengths and weaknesses are, and we got a better idea of how to attack things, this spring.
And do you see the guys embracing that too? It was so new to them last year so quickly that they've got that comfort level?
Yeah, I think it's confidence too, Scott. Last year at this time, they didn't know what we were doing. And, to have some success obviously breeds confidence. And so the guys are, I think, they're chomping at the bit to get back out there. They're excited about, how can we get better and how can we move forward and I think the whole team's excited right now about that.
I know you never took Riley for granted, but you always had Riley really for the last 4 years. Didn't have to worry about that. What's that dynamic like coming into spring when you're looking for someone on a special team that is so important to the team?
Yeah, it's a great opportunity for all those guys. We got Jacob Carlson, who's a freshman, or is a freshman, did some really good things. Has shown a ton of potential and promise, and excited to see how the all season's paid off for him. There's several guys like that in that specialist group, and so it's going to be a competition this spring, and I'm looking forward to a healthy one.
And that falls on Coach Brown's shoulders?
Yeah, it sure does. And we put a huge emphasis on our special teams in the spring. We had we call our special teams the pack. We had a pack draft last week, had captains. We had a real draft just like they do in the NFL. And so we've got teams set aside. Those guys compete. And, it's pretty fun to watch, be a part of, and it kind of emphasizes the importance of teams for us. So Coach Brown's done a phenomenal job with our special teams unit and trying to raise the bar in regards to who we are in that phase of the game and how aggressive we are, and continue to evolve there as well.
Cool. Thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
All right, James.
Just one more from me. I know you're looking at focusing on the fundamentals for the players, but for you personally or for the staff, is there anything that you want to accomplish over the spring?
We just want to get better. We want to get better, and obviously there's some areas where we have to establish some depth and some things that we didn't do a great job of in the fall that we've got to really go attack. In the off season, that's what you do. You work on recruiting, you go back and you watch the cut-ups, look at the things you did well, the things you didn't do well, and try to build on all those things with a different group. And part of it's evaluating the talent in our roster and trying to figure out what it is that we can do. How can we put those guys in the best possible position?
Thanks, Coach.
Joe Miller.
Hey, Coach, we talked about a little bit about last year, and you've talked about it with Drew coming in as the offensive coordinator, and you kind of wanted to, maybe remodel what you thought about at wide receiver and tight end. Obviously you have some of those guys coming back that were productive in those spots last year, but how have you evaluated those two positions and kind of how you are starting to reimagine those positions here at Navy?
The wide receiver position for us really hasn't changed a lot, Joe. I think the incorporation of a tight end into what we do is become a really big part of our offense. It needs to be a big part of our offense. And as you know, that's a developmental room for us because we didn't really recruit tight ends before that. So I'm pleased with the progress. I think John Williams has done an awesome job with that room. I think we've gone out and recruited really, really well. You'd love to get to the point where, you could potentially put two tight ends on the field. But looking forward to continue to establish the depth and those guys getting better. Obviously, Cody Howard's been outstanding in that position. Excited about getting a healthy Cody Howard here pretty soon. So I'm excited about the guys that we have coming in. Excited about Jake Norris coming back, do some good things for us as well. So it's a room that's going to continue to grow and develop, and I'm excited about that because it needs to be a big part of our offense. It is a big part of our offense.
One last one from me is, what were your thoughts? Schedule came out. What were your thoughts on the schedule?
I think it's good. I think it lays out well. I think our buys come at good times. Got a few more home games or a couple more home games, so that's nice. No, I think it's set up well. Excited about the schedule.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.
Speaking of wide receivers, need to shout out Nathan Kent, who won the Patriot League 200, 400, and 4x400 on Sunday, and led Navy to the victory. He was a Patriot League track athlete of the meet and scored the most points in the meet as well. So second year in a row, he's done both of those. So congratulations to Nathan. Wags.
Speaking of which, is he going to be involved in spring practice at all?
No, he won't be, unfortunately. I texted him last night after the meet, congratulating him. He said, now on to outdoor track. I said, how about spring football? I said, I wish I could do both, Coach. I wish he could too, but he's a special young man, and he's going to put in the work outside to get better. I do know that. And obviously, getting him in the summertime would be big for him, but proud of what he's doing in track. and wish we could have him in spring ball, but not just for his ability, but for his leadership qualities as well. So we'll miss him during spring, but I know he's going to continue to put in the work to become a better wide receiver as well.
But he attends meetings and stuff, right?
When he can, yeah.
Okay. Offensive line, you're losing 3 starters: Connor McMahon at left tackle, Brent Self at center, and Javon Bouton at right tackle. I'm looking here at Hoke Smith finished last year as the starting right guard, but he's a center as well. I'm curious to move him back to center because Cam Nichols has some experience, and the only tackle that's on the depth chart from last year that's returning is Caden Hooper. So can you talk about it looks like you've got to rebuild this offensive line a bit.
Yeah, especially at offensive tackle. We've got some good young players in the system. Caden Hooper's not with us anymore, but you mentioned Hoke Smith. He's the guy that's got to be able to play, both center and guard. Really smart player that's able to do some different things for us. Cam Nichols showed flashes of being a really good player in the fall. Obviously, Ben Purvis is big coming back, and the tough part and the good part for us this spring is, Ben's coming off an injury, and so is Hope. So we're not going to have those guys for probably the majority of spring ball. So a great opportunity, for our younger players to develop. Some of those guys got to grow up pretty quick during spring football. So I'm excited about the opportunities those guys have, and certainly position group that we need to develop quickly.
You mentioned earlier about the secondary and losing quite a number of players there. Who are some of the guys you're excited about? Is Matthew Saliga looking like he's going to try to replace Mbidi? Or I know Ira got a lot of time last year, but I mean, losing Deshaun Peel and Ray and Mbidi is huge.
Yeah, lost some really good players on defense. And like I said earlier, there's several guys. We've got a lot of bodies at safety, some promising bodies for sure. Some guys that have played some snaps for us. Feel good about the guys in that room right now. I'm excited about their development in spring ball. Up to this point, been a tremendous off season. So those guys have really changed their bodies, and they're going to get a ton of reps this spring. And that's typically, especially for those freshmen, even sophomores, when you see the most growth, is during the spring, going into the summertime. So yeah, it's a solid group. Obviously, some guys are going to have to merge in that group, but I'm excited about what that's going to look like.
One thing that should be noted: Ben Purvis will be wearing number 68 this year, so he will have the David Forney number. Tim Nolan.
Well deserved.
Coach, going off what Joe was asking about the schedule this season, what have you seen from the American Conference, and how has it really improved in your time with the Mids?
We've obviously lost some good programs in the conference, but we've picked up some really good ones as well. I think there's a good amount of equality in the league. There's obviously some teams that are more on the talented end. You look at teams like Memphis and South Florida and UTSA. It's a good league, from top to bottom. A lot of new coaches in the league, a lot of really good coaches coming on board in some of these programs. And so some of these teams are going to look very different, from a schematic standpoint, from a culture standpoint. But it's a really talented league. It's a fun league to be a part of.
2 teams from the American ranked in the final AP poll. Navy was not one of them. How much does that motivate you guys going into this upcoming season?
Yeah, and we beat those 2 teams, right? About that. No, I don't. Like I said, I don't.
By
look
double
at that
digits. Double digits.
I don't look at that really as motivation. It's a new year for us. Like I said last year, we want to be relevant in the landscape of college football. We want to be in the conversations, and I think we're going to be a team that any given Saturday, we can play with anybody. That's the goal around here.
You said earlier on the Zoom, Coach, that you want to take Navy places that it hasn't been. You see extra steps and goals to achieve for this program after last year. What are some of those goals?
I think we got to build off what we did, the previous year. Some good things I'm really proud of, but I think there's still a lot of meat left on the bone. There's a lot of things that we can do better, in every phase of the game. A lot of things we can do better as coaches, putting our players in a position to be successful. and continue to do the same things that we've been doing. The culture piece is well in place here. We're going to be elite when it comes to the intangibles. What we need to be able to do is go out and match that with our execution. We're unique in all three phases of what we do, and we'll continue to be unique and do things that, hopefully when we play more talented teams or equalizers for us. But we got to go out and execute those things at a high level, with great fundamentals and the intangibles to match that.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Got about 10 minutes. I'll just open it up. Anyone else have any other questions? Open forum. I'll ask one, Coach. Justin Reed's been such a bell cow at defensive end for Navy the last couple of years. Who are some of the names to look for at that position?
Yeah, Ben Franklin, Julian Matome, Crane LaFond. We got a bunch of good ones. I'm probably missing, a couple, but it's the one area where the last couple of years we've actually had some pretty decent depth. Is on our defensive line. So excited about that group of guys. They've all had really good off seasons and all really talented players.
What do you do with Griff in the spring? What kind of position do you put him at in the spring?
Griffin?
Yeah.
Yeah, he'll be a defensive tackle, like he finished up in the fall. Obviously, he's a guy that can play both nose and defensive tackle. Those inside guys are pretty interchangeable.
Okay.
Like Tracy, that one.
Yeah, Coach, I saw there were a couple guys who changed positions. I know, like Mikey Pearson, I think changed from snipe to fullback. Are there any other guys that you want to, give them a chance to see if they could make some impact at a different position? And how do you balance the need to develop fundamentals with the desire to experiment a little?
Yeah, well, I don't think there'll be a ton of experimenting. I think the moves are pretty much wholesale at this point. We're not going to go back and forth with the guy during spring ball. But Hanson Colley is one of those guys, the freshman that we moved from defensive tackle to offensive tackle. Big, long, athletic young man. I think he's got a bright future, playing on the offensive line. It's one of the changes that we made. There's some guys playing corner for us that might be able to play safety. That's one you kind of experiment with, Mike. It's not a true wholesale change going from offense to defense. With Mikey, put on a little bit of weight. He's a bigger slot. Becomes a pretty dynamic B-back for us. And some of those things we may, during the course of spring ball, may make a change. Some of them we've already talked about and made those changes. But there's some other guys we're going to give it a week or two and see what it looks like, and then explore some other possibilities as well.
Thanks, Coach.
Anybody else?
What about inside linebacker, where you've lost two guys that played a lot of snaps, in Kyle Jacob and Colin Ramos?
Yeah, well, I think it's a really, really talented group. Look at guys that have played snaps for us. Joe Grant being one of those guys. He's an exceptional talent. Looking for him to kind of take the next step. Marcus Blazard played a lot of snaps for us last year. Coming off of a mission, he was out of football for 2 years, and so I think you can see some tremendous growth with him as well. Mark Anthony Parker, really, really talented freshman, played a lot of snaps for us as well. I think has an extremely bright future here. And there's several other guys in that mix as well. So excited about that group. It's a really athletic group with a lot of potential.
In terms of fullback, will you lose Daba? You're going to need to build some depth behind Alex Texa. Mm-hmm. I know Reynolds showed some things as a blocker last year, but what about finding somebody who's a good runner? Is Shane that guy too?
Yeah, excited about Shane Reynolds. I mean, he's dynamic, be back, and excited about Angle too. He's had tremendous offseason, had awesome fourth quarters for us, and as a guy that's a really effective runner. He's got to improve when the ball is not in his hands as a blocker, but he's certainly willing to do that. And Woolfolk's a good player. Moving Mikey back, we've got a lot of good ones at be back.
Well, you mentioned Carlson, who was the backup punter last year, but who else is in the mix to compete with Carlson?
Yeah. Nate Kirkwood's the kicker, right? And we've got several guys that they're going to compete for both of those spots. Kirkwood finished up the year for us, but it was a little inconsistent. So we're going to open the whole thing up and let those guys compete. We're going to track things. And, we actually drafted the kickers in the mock draft as well. So they're going to have a chance to score points doing those things. And so we're going to take a look at everybody.
And I guess Fry is also not going to be because of baseball. He's not going to be around for spring.
Yeah, not the entirety of it. Like Kent, he'll be at meetings and be at things he can be.
Anybody else? I'll throw one more out. Go back to Griffin Willis that Scott Wyckoff brought up. I felt like his insertion into the lineup really helped the run game. Is that true? Is that a
there's no question. It's like our rush defense pre-Griffin Willis at 3 technique and post and I thought he was exceptional. He's another guy that's had a really good all season, so excited to see how much that's going to pay off for him. But we got a lot of depth, our defensive lines. We're excited about a lot of those young guys. Matt Reyes has had a great all season as well. Looks really good and played a lot of snaps for us last year. So expect those guys to compete. But certainly Griffin had a good year, finished it off really well. Excited to see how he continues, to progress.
And with Willis moving to defensive tackle, what does that do to the depth behind Landon at nose guard?
Xavier Arrington, another guy that played a lot of snaps for us. Chris Harak is a young guy that tore his pec. Didn't get to play for us last year. Kind of came on toward the end of the year. It was a guy that was really difficult to block on the scout team. So, really excited about him as well.
Anybody have anything else?
One last question for me. I don't know how far along Drew Cronick got with installing all of his offense. Do you anticipate putting in more of his playbook during spring ball?
Yeah, I think we'd like to get to a little bit more. I think last year it was all so new. We had to go pretty slow with it. I think we'll make a lot more progress, this spring than we did a year ago. And there's new things that we're talking about doing as well, through small season study that we want to incorporate, into what we're doing.
Thanks, Coach. Appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks, Wags.
Thanks a lot, Coach. Just a reminder, everyone, we'll have tomorrow we've got Coach Volker at 1:30 and Coach Cronick at 2:30. And then on Thursday, we have Nick Horvath at 11 and Landon Robinson at 1:30. I'll be live from Boston for that one. Anyone have anything else?
One last thing. Did you enjoy sitting next to John Riggins at the Touchdown Club banquet, an Oklahoma guy and a Kansas guy?
Yeah, he's quite a character, man. I always thought John Riggins was kind of a straight-laced guy, but enjoyed listening to him talk for sure. Ton of personality.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah.
Thanks.